There was a truly horrific attack today carried out at a private school in Nashville, Tennessee. The facts are still emerging, but what is known is the following. There were 6 people, innocent people, who were murdered by the mass shooter. 3 of them young children, 2 of them 9 years old, the other 8 years old, as well as 3 employees of the school, including a custodian and a substitute teacher, and apparently one of the heads of the school. According to the Nashville Police Department, they know who the killer is, who died as part of the police operation. There you see from the local newspaper, The Tennessean, the headline, Nashville school shooting updates, school shooting suspect identified. The article reads, quote, Metro Nashville police say a former student carrying 2 assault rifles and a handgun killed 3 students and 3 adults at the Covenant School in Nashville Monday, March 23rd. The suspect, who police have identified as a 28-year-old transgendered man, entered the school through a side entrance and began shooting. Shortly before 10:30 a.m., police responded to the school and were able to locate the suspect on the 2nd floor of the school in a lobby where they fatally shot him. Now, we have a video we want to show you from the chief of police of the Nashville Police Department talking about the incident, the episode, and who they identify as the person responsible for this incredibly tragic massacre.
Yes, we have identified the suspect. It's a 28-year-old female white, actually a Nashvilleian, or lives in the Nashville area. We are having ongoing investigation as it pertains to her at this time.
Located her place of where she lived? You have officers there?
We have.
Was she wearing body armor?
Was she wearing body armor? I can't say that far into the investigation. I don't remember seeing it, but I can't say for certain if she had body armor on or not.
Does she have any connection to the church?
From my initial findings is that at one point she was a student at that school, but unsure what year, all of that. But that's what I've been told so far.
Did she give any word on social media, or has her social media been examined at this point?
The investigations are still going at this point. Our federal partners, our state partners, we're all looking into that to see exactly. This is still fluid at the time, but we're looking at everything.
Now, you notice in that clip, the police chief repeatedly referred to the killer as she and as her. That appears to be what is commonly known as misgendering, because later in the press conference, the police chief acknowledged that the shooter identifies as a male, identifies as a trans male. Numerous social media postings and other profiles from the person who's the shooter also identifies himself as a trans man. Now, one of the most despicable media practices which we have condemned very often is that every single time there's a shooting of this type, the media instantly seeks to politicize it in accordance with their own agenda. And that means one of 2 things happen. If there is some way to suggest that the shooter is in any way an adherent to or a believer in conservative political ideology, before anything is even known about the motive, the media narrative will instantly arise that it isn't just the killer, but also people who identify or who advocate that ideology who are the people to blame for the massacre. This has happened over and over and over again, to the point that we have written about it many times before. If we can pull up an article, I think there's one coming. Here is the article where back in May of last year, you probably remember that a white shooter went to a neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, where he knew that there was a large population of black people, and walked into a grocery store and shot up the grocery store and killed several innocent people. And overnight, or even before the night was over, the media had decided that the person to blame was not only the shooter, but also Tucker Carlson, the Fox host, as well as a variety of other conservatives who have expressed concerns about immigration in the United States and the levels of it. And the argument, the rationale that they used was the shooter had left a manifesto in which he invoked what he referred to as the Great Replacement Theory, namely the concern in his view that the United States was being radically and purposely and fundamentally altered because there was an attempt to import into the United States non-white immigrants in order to replace the white population. And since he believes that there is no such thing as a legitimate non-white American citizen, he believes he was justified in murdering those that he regards as illegitimately in the United States, namely all non-white people. Now, what was so despicable about the attempt to heap blame on people like Tucker Carlson and those who have expressed concerns about immigration in the past, or even people who have noted the truthful observation that Democratic Party strategists have long celebrated the fact that immigration was demographically changing the United States in the favor of the Democratic Party as they perceived it because non-white voters were more likely to vote for Democrats. That was the argument of Democratic strategists. They wrote books about it, that immigrants were replacing the prior demographic makeup of the United States, and that would lead to a permanent Democratic majority. Anybody who noted that that was what Democrats were saying they wanted to do was instantly blamed for that shooting in Buffalo, even though the killer in Buffalo left a manifesto identifying by name the people who he said had influenced him in his worldview that caused him to go and do that shooting. And it was a very long list. Not one person on Fox News or any conservative in mainstream American conservative politics was on the list. The only mention of Fox News in that manifesto was one that criticized and blamed Fox for being part of the establishment the killer in Buffalo thought was responsible for all of those problems, but none of that mattered. There was at least a week-long coverage of an attempt to say that Tucker Carlson and those who thought like him were the actual murderers because he and those like him radicalized the Buffalo shooter. And so we wrote this article, and you see the headline there, "The Demented and Selective Game of Instantly Blaming Opponents for Mass Shootings." And the subheadline there says, "All ideologies spawn psychopath who kill innocents in its name, yet only some are blamed for their violent adherence by opportunists cravenly exploiting the corpses while they still lie on the ground." Because that's exactly what happened in Buffalo, and it's what happened in many other cases. Now, the reason I said it was selective is because every political faction produces people who carry out violent acts. I reviewed the case of James Hodgkinson, who in 2017 went and deliberately shot as many Republican members of his Congress as he could, almost murdering Steve Scalise. And it turned out he was an ardent fan of Rachel Maddow and of Bernie Sanders, and carried out those attacks explicitly in the name of the arguments which both of them regularly advance, that the Republican Party is racist and fascist and a white supremacist party and is connected to Russia. He left all kinds of documents explaining why he wanted to murder Republicans, and they were verbatim practically what comes out of the mouth of Rachel Maddow and Bernie Sanders, and yet nobody serious sought to blame Rachel Maddow or Bernie Sanders for inspiring him to go and do that, because they've never once suggested that people should go murder Republicans. It would be preposterous and disgusting to try and place the blood that was spilled on that day at their doorstep. And yet, every time there is a shooting by someone who either is or who they perceive to be conservative, they instantly apply that framework and start blaming everyone they can find who are their political enemies in order to say that conservative ideology or right-wing politics is to blame for these mass shootings. So it's not only a disgusting and a dishonest framework, but it's one that is applied very, very selectively based on whatever suits the needs of the moment. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.